Thanks for tuning in to The Remote Traveler. Today we'll be checking out Anforini, known as the Little Greece of Lebanon, as well as a few other stops. Before we begin, please be sure to like and subscribe. We decided to stay at Marseille, which is a Lebanese guest house. It's about a minute walk from Tahet, which is that kind of white, Santorini style beach that Enfeh is famous for. Part of the reason why we chose Marseille is because it's actually pet friendly and it's a bed and breakfast, so they can make breakfast for you and all of that. There's also a hammock and a garden for the kids to hang out in. It's going to be pretty easy to see why this fishing village, Anfeh, has been called, Lebanon's Little Greece, Anforini, Mykonos. It has these kind of names. It's a smaller replica of those towns, and it becomes pretty obvious once you get here. Wooden bridges, passages, and balconies border the sea to give visitors a gorgeous view of the Mediterranean. Scattered among the white cabins are windmills that are used to pump seawater to extract salt. The production of the sea salt has long been a staple of the local economy and is referred to as white gold. We'll see that process later on in this video as well. Located just 65 kilometers north of Beirut, you'll be shocked at how clean the water is to swim in. This was our Chihuahua puppy, Ari's first swim as well, so I'd say that he liked Enfeh, although maybe he was just trying to survive. This is the view down to the beach from the peninsula, which actually protects it from the west winds. This peninsula and the surrounding area has an insane amount of history, with ruins, of cities and castles dating back to the pre-Phoenician period. It has old churches and caves from prehistoric times in the Stone Age. Dug into the rock near the coast served for wine pressing when Anfeh was known for its wine production. Phoenicians and later the Crusaders produced wine from nearby vineyards. On this rocky peninsula once stood a fort that was destroyed by the Mamluks when they defeated the Crusaders, because the Mamluks did not have maritime defense experience and were afraid that the Crusaders, who had retreated to Cyprus, might attempt to retake the fort. So they simply destroyed it. Now, from what I've read at least, this was at one point a massive fortress. Now remember that Enfeh has been minimally excavated. So when you're here, you get the feeling that there could be much more to be discovered. They found mosaics, they found mentions of it in ancient tablets in Egypt, so you have mentions of, for instance, the Amorites, fighting alongside the people of Anfeh against Byblos, and that Anfeh was conquered by the Assyrian army. However, there's a lot left to be desired in terms of the history, but again, you can see these carvings that honestly remind me quite a bit of Smarja. So there's a lot to see here, and I feel like the history is still kind of underrated. I read about an ancient quarry here that was known as the Great Trench. I'm not sure if this is it or not, but if so, then this would have been used by the Phoenicians as a dry dock. For dinner, we went to Albasa in Batroun, because Batroun is a pretty short drive from Enfeh as well. However, there are lots of good places to eat in Enfeh, especially if you're a seafood lover, which we are. So this is actually Mexican beer. If you're Lebanese, you're very familiar with this, but it's funny to me as an American over here that they call it Mexican beer, because I actually hadn't heard of this until being over in Lebanon, but basically they put a lot of lemon at the bottom of the cup, nice almaza, which is this amazing Lebanese brand of beer, and salt on the rim. That's of course calamari. You got your sushi, and again, there's the ocean right there. We're pretty near the Phoenician wall, which you'll see later in this video, and we've covered before, but it's just so pretty. That's nice to go back there. The next day, our first stop was at Deir Natour Monastery. This convent's ancient origin is attached to a legend of a rich man who committed adultery. Filled with remorse, he attached a padlocked iron chain to his ankle and threw the key into the seashore and survived on the fish brought to him by local fishermen, who called him the guardian of the cavern. One day, a fisherman brought him a fish, in whose entrails the hermit found the key of the padlock. He knew then that God had delivered him from his suffering, and he built a convent above the cavern. He dedicated it to the Mother of God, but it also took the name of the guardian. So the legend says. According to Crusader documents, the monastery of the Presentation of Our Lady in Natour was built by Cistercians. Indeed, the church interior resembles that of the Cistercian church of Balamand, built in 1157. Otherwise, the history of Deir el-Natour is hidden in obscurity, partly because you had the Ottomans and the Mamluks come through, and so not too much is known in that interim period between. Now, at Deir el-Natour, these are actually some of the larger salt mills in all of Enfeh, which again is what they produce. It's called, their white gold. And as you saw earlier, the monastery had these bags of salt for sale. On our way back to Beirut, we stopped in Batroun, and this place you'll see here is Hilmi's, which is famous for its lemonade.
Mama, I think I'll get this.
It's banana and chocolate.
That's funny, man. I was thinking about the same thing.
Do I get the same thing?
And you guys with this one banana chocolate?
This is just chocolate.
After Hilmi's, we stopped by the massive Phoenician wall. I think it's about 15 feet tall, but it's pretty easy to climb on top of. So we haven't done this yet, but I'd imagine you could, bring a bottle of wine and, set up a picnic and watch the sunset, and it'd be, a fun little romantic spot to come to. The ancient Phoenician sea wall was originally a natural structure composed of petrified sand dunes, which were gradually reinforced by the Phoenicians with rocks, and the wall as it stands today took its present shape in the 1st century BC. The Phoenicians used this wall as protection against sea storms and invaders, while during Roman times, it again functioned as a quarry. Our final stop in these 48 hours in and around Anfeh was actually go to the Batroun Port. So we went here to check out these little lighthouses we'd seen in some different images and things like that. It was cool, but I'd say that, Anfeh was definitely my favorite part of the trip, seeing the kind of little Santorini looking section. And then also, I did think the monastery was really nice. However, if you're going to go there, make sure to dress modestly because they are pretty strict about their rules. But all in all, would say that Anfeh is really worth it. It's a beautiful spot and felt just absolutely right. thank you so much for coming on this tour of Anfeh and all the surrounding areas that we've shown you. And, you know, we hope that you'll join us again. So please be sure to like and subscribe to The Remote Traveler. Again, thank you so much for watching. All the best.